All right, everybody. Good afternoon. And by the way, I'm going to put a link to the video that I'm using in the background in the description because number one, it's funny, and number two, I want to give credit to the people who wrote this. Ignore the hair. I'm out of it right now. A little bit. When I say I'm out of it, I mean I'm in it enough to do this video, but I'm not really in a I just didn't want to do anything today other than record, and normally I'd comb my hair. Anyway, so the first thing is I've updated my channel name to be a bit more descriptive. That way, branding basically. I'm not going to update the logo for right now because number one, I'm terrible at art, and number two, I'm not sure what a good logo would be. Anyway, so today is a Saturday. I'm done with the Army Navy game because Army is getting crushed. Anyway, so this is back to my political soapbox. And today we are talking about guns. Because, well, I live in Virginia and there's a lot of hoopla about Governor Northam and the recently elected Democratic majorities in both the House of Delegates and the state Senate passing laws that don't make sense in Virginia, but make a ton of sense if we were living in California. Not even then, they don't really actually make sense. But they're more fitting with laws that have been passed in places like California, New York, and Massachusetts, and Hawaii than a southern state that is competitive at election times and has a very strong history of gun ownership and all of that stuff. So, my opinion on guns really hasn't changed. You can check any of my previous videos on firearms in the past if you want to get a basic viewpoint of it. But to start, none of this stuff is constitutional. The scary part is, well, some of it might actually be constitutional. The universal background checks, yeah, okay, fine. There's nothing in the Constitution that says, as long as if you pass your background check and you don't come back as a felon, which is automatically disqualified, and I don't think anybody's going to complain about that because there was due process involved, stuff like that, right? Same thing with mental health issues, right? That's not really something I have a problem with. I don't think it's necessary, mostly because the truth is most crimes committed with guns are done with stolen weapons, not purchased weapons. In addition, it's technically illegal to sell a gun without a background check, though that only applies if someone commits a crime with a firearm they purchased without the check, or they were a prohibited person and it gets found out that they purchased a gun from you. Other than that, there's no real... other than that, it just doesn't matter. Because you, by selling to someone, are acting as a character witness, saying this person would pass a background check. Fair enough, right? So basically, I could go up to my brother and say, hey, I know you would pass a background check. Here, do you want to purchase a gun from me? And he could say, yeah, sure. I need something to go hunting with, so yeah, I'll purchase it. Cool. Done and dusted. And there we go. And there's no problems because I know for a fact he can pass a background check. Cool. I wouldn't, I think it'd be a pain in the ass if they made me, put my brother through a background check with these new universal background check law. But in all honesty, it's not. It isn't necessary, is what I'm trying to say. They're just basically making something that is technically illegal more illegal and trying to enforce it. That's not the one I have a problem with. The ones I have a problem with are the assault weapons ban, the magazine capacity restrictions, the purchase limits. for, say, handguns, right? And some of the weird language. So, at first, it was going to be a straight AWB, no grandfather clause or anything. Now they're saying, we'll grandfather your weapons as long as you register them. That's basically saying, we're not going to ban them and take them away now. We'll do that later. We just want to know where they are. So, I've always been skeptical of gun control advocates who say we don't want to take your guns. Because as soon as their measures don't work, they're going to push for stronger and stronger restrictions. Because if their methods did work, and they would continue to pass even stronger restrictions. Anyway, because, well, it would work. But even then, it's not right to deny someone the right to defend themselves and to choose how they do so. The other reason is the cat's been messing with my hair. Yeah. By the way, I did find a way to keep him occupied while I record. I basically turned my extra bathroom into a cat room with a scratching post and everything. Yeah. And some toys, and of course I put the box in there and all the other stuff. Anyway, so moving back onto the actual topic of this video. A lot of people are going to say, well, an AWB isn't unconstitutional. I'm going to argue, yes, it is. Because the text of the Second Amendment reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, the part gun control advocates will use to say that this is entirely constitutional is the justification clause that says a well-regulated militia. So, first, what is a well-regulated militia? Well, if we use the language of the day, militia meant people. And actually, it still does. It means a citizen army. Okay? It still means that if you read it in the dictionary. But both Virginia's Constitution, which says the militia is made up of the body of the people, it actually says that in the Virginia Constitution, that what the militia is. So that makes it even more unconstitutional, especially considering it then includes the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And guess who wrote that? George Mason. We'll get to George Mason at some point, because he's not exactly the ideal person to start quoting. He also said, for slavery reasons, but he also stated that the militia are the people themselves. Pretty clear, considering you essentially wrote the Second Amendment. But the other part is well-regulated. What did that mean? Well, well-regulated in the back then, that term meant that, number one, they were well-equipped. Number two, they were trained. Which, okay, training can range from full-on tactical training to they know how to shoot straight and they know basic safety and all that type of stuff. And truthfully, the founders meant more towards the second one of the things I said. Because to them, it was their idea that people would take initiative and defend their families and their homes themselves and their towns and all the way up to the national level. That said, the militia performed extremely poorly in the American Revolution, and the Continental Army is probably the reason why we won. But the militia wasn't completely useless all of the time. As a matter of fact, the militia won the battles of Lexington and Concord, and they were the ones who set up an extremely good siege of Boston. And I personally argue that certain militia units were exceptional. For example, Daniel Morgan sharpshooters, and the Vermont guy, Ethan Allen, his Green Mountain Boys. Those were two examples of some extremely fine militia units. Now, some people will argue that Daniel Morgan was more Continental Army, but I think because of who he recruited and how he operated, that it's more akin to what we talk about when we're talking about militia tactics. More guerrilla fighting, more sneaky stuff, and trying to keep your distance, and skirmishers, that type of thing, right? So yeah. Plus, in the United States, we have a very long history of self-supplying. Our soldiers and sailors self-supplying when they go off to war. Civil War, it was extremely common. American Revolution, even the Continental Army, you basically had to bring your own rifle. And even up to the Spanish-American War, self-supplying was a major thing. Theodore Roosevelt and his all-volunteer cavalry regiment, he was the one who supplied it, for the most part. There was obviously some level of government assistance in that. But even private citizens have petitioned the government to say, hey, can we go fight a war and put our own crap on our own crap? For example, in the War of 1812, someone sent a letter of marque and reprisal to James Madison, who was president at the time, to put a cannon on his private merchant ship. And then later in World War II, Ernest Hemingway, the famous author, what he decided to do was he didn't even ask permission. He just put a howitzer on his fishing boat. Got with a bunch of his friends, brought along a crap ton of gin, and they went hunting German U-boats. Yeah, so we have a long history of our citizens not only owning weapons of war. As a matter of fact, in the Revolution, our civilians were better armed than the British because we had rifles, they had muskets, meaning we were more accurate. Hence Daniel Morgan sharpshooters. Of course, officers in the military today still have the option of self-supplying a sidearm if they want. Especially if they want to use something other than the M9, which is the official sidearm. I still think they were wrong to switch from the 1911, but I'm just a Southerner who happened to grow up in an Army family. Anyway, so yeah, we have a very long history of Americans owning better weapons than the military uses. So why is it all of a sudden that we can't have weapons of war on our streets when we've literally done that for 240 years? And the truth of the matter is because Democrats are scared. Now, it's not just Democrats. There are a lot of Democrats who actually are all in favor of gun rights. I know a few. I even know some who own AR-15s and AKs because they think they're cool. And they are. But the reality of the situation is that... I'll pause that there. Anyway, the reality of the situation is that these weapons are not any more inherently dangerous when it comes to their lethality than any other gun. So, you know, it's about effective fire rate. And the truth is that if you're even somewhat decent, you can almost match a semi-automatic rifle with a lever gun. It is entirely possible. You won't 100% match it, but you'll be pretty darn close to matching the theoretical, and effective fire rate is basically the same. And what effective fire rate is basically, we're describing what happens when you want to, number one, try and be accurate, and number two, what you're trying to do, and also factoring in reloading and anything like that. And the shooting that Virginia's Democratic Party is trying to use to justify all of these new gun control laws weren't even committed with the guns they want to ban. The Virginia Beach shooting was committed with a shotgun. So the new laws wouldn't have done a damn thing to stop it. And they wonder why we're protesting them. And, you know, creating Second Amendment sanctuaries. They genuinely wonder why we're complaining. Well, the laws you're trying to pass wouldn't have done a damn thing. So why are you trying to pass them? And it gets even better because the other, quote, recent shooting that they're going to try and cite is Virginia Tech, which was committed with handguns. Yeah, I think I'm starting to see a pattern here. If they were honest and were stating that these laws won't actually change crime statistics and they won't actually prevent mass killings, at least they're being honest. I'd still disagree and I'd still be against it, but I would applaud their honesty. So, yeah, that's where we're sitting on this. Is the statistics are going to show that you're not going to prevent mass killings or even violent crime with any sort of gun restrictions. In fact, broadly, you'll see a minor uptick in violent crime. Not a significant one, but a minor one. Yeah. And of course, mass killings won't be stopped by gun bans because you can use so many other things to cause mass death. A truck, a car. You can make a bomb. I mean, how many times have we seen those used? And yet people act like guns are the ones that the problem's around. I think it's stupid, in all honesty, to blame the gun because it's clearly not the problem. There's so many other problems that are at the root of crime that to blame the tool and think that restricting one possible tool is going to change the outcome. Because people have been killing each other long before guns were even a thing. Hell, people were killing each other before blades were a thing. We were using sticks and stones, quite literally sticks and stones, to kill people. Why all of a sudden are we just considering that anything else is going to prevent it? I mean, people still use hammers and baseball bats and pillows to kill people these days. Believe it or not, blunt objects kill more people than rifles do, and that's nationwide. So that's kind of my basic opinion on the fact that these laws aren't going to be effective. Number two, why it's unconstitutional. And three, why I think it's ridiculous that the Democrats are doing this. And I'm not trying to blame Democrats, okay? I'm talking specifically about the ones in government, okay? Anyway, have a nice day. I'll see y'all next time. Take it easy. Bye.